Every day, I asked my wife for connection. Every day, she was too tired. This went on for months, and I finally gave up. Then she wanted $500 for a spa day to relax and feel appreciated. I told her I know exactly how rejection feels. Let me paint you the picture of what my marriage had become. Picture this. You come home from work, genuinely excited to spend time with the person you married, only to be met with the same response every single time. Too tired, too stressed, too busy scrolling through her phone. It started small, like these things always do. A declined invitation to watch a movie together. A brush off when I suggested we take a walk. The classic, not tonight, when I tried to initiate any kind of physical connection. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Work stress, family drama, just a rough patch that every couple goes through. But months turned into a pattern, and the pattern became our new normal. Every evening, I'd try something different. Maybe she'd want to cook dinner together? Nope, she'd already ordered takeout and was watching TikTok videos. How about we sit on the porch and talk about our day? Can't. She was texting her sister about some drama. Want to go to bed early together? She needed to catch up on her Netflix show. The excuses were endless, but the energy was mysteriously available for everything except me. She'd spend 2 hours on the phone with her girlfriends, laughing and animated. She'd stay up until midnight binge-watching shows. She'd have energy to go shopping with her mom on weekends, energy to post Instagram stories, energy to argue about whose turn it was to take out the trash. But ask for 10 minutes of genuine conversation? Too exhausted. Suggest we be intimate? She'd been tired all day. Want to go on a date? She needed to rest this weekend. I tried everything I could think of. I planned surprise dinners, brought home her favorite coffee, offered to give her massages with no expectations attached. I suggested we see a counselor together. I bought tickets to shows she mentioned wanting to see. Nothing worked. Every gesture was met with the same wall of indifference wrapped in exhaustion. The turning point came on a Tuesday night in September. I'd gotten home early, picked up ingredients for her favorite meal, and spent an hour cooking. When she walked in, she barely acknowledged the effort. She grabbed a plate, sat on the couch, and started watching YouTube videos while eating. I sat across from her, waiting for any sign that she wanted to engage. After 20 minutes of silence, I asked a simple question. How was your day? Without looking up from her phone, she mumbled, Fine. I'm just really tired. That's when it hit me. I wasn't asking for the moon. I wasn't demanding anything unreasonable. I just wanted to feel like I mattered to the person who promised to love me. But somewhere along the way, I'd become background noise in my own marriage. That night, lying in bed while she scrolled through her phone beside me, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done trying. Done chasing someone who clearly didn't want to be caught. Done being the only person fighting for a relationship that had become completely one-sided. From that moment forward, I stopped asking. No more dinner suggestions, no more movie invitations, no more attempts at conversation. If she wanted connection, she'd have to initiate it herself. I focused on my own routines, my own interests, my own peace of mind. The change was subtle but immediate. I started reading more, got back into hobbies I'd abandoned, spent time with friends I'd neglected while trying to fix a marriage that couldn't be fixed by my effort alone. I wasn't angry or bitter. I was simply redirecting my energy toward things that actually gave me something back. For 3 weeks, she didn't notice the change. Why would she? I was still paying the bills, still keeping the house running, still being a responsible adult. The only difference was that I stopped being her unpaid entertainment director and emotional support system. But she was about to notice. Because sometimes the universe has a sense of humor, and it was about to deliver the perfect test of exactly how much my energy and attention had been worth to her. The test would come in the form of a $500 request that would reveal everything I needed to know about where I stood in my own marriage. 3 weeks into my new approach of not chasing connection, she finally noticed something had shifted. Not because she missed our conversations or wanted to spend time together, but because she needed something from me. And that something cost $500. It was a Thursday evening when she approached me with what she clearly thought was a reasonable request. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after making myself dinner. Yes, just myself, since she'd eaten earlier while watching YouTube. When she walked in with that particular tone, that meant she wanted something. I've been thinking, she started, leaning against the counter in a way that used to seem casual but now felt calculated. I really need to book that spa package at the resort downtown. You know, the one my sister recommended? It's a full-day thing, massage, facial, the works. I kept washing my plate, waiting for her to get to the point. It's $500, but honestly, I really need this. I've been so stressed lately, and I deserve to feel appreciated and relaxed. She paused, clearly expecting me to immediately reach for my wallet. Can you put it on your card? The audacity was breathtaking. Here was someone who hadn't had energy for a 10-minute conversation with me in months, asking me to fund her relaxation because she felt unappreciated. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I turned around slowly, drying my hands on the dish towel, and looked at her with what I'm sure was a barely contained smile. You know what? I actually know exactly how it feels to not feel appreciated. Her expression shifted slightly, like she was trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic or sympathetic. What do you mean? I said, hanging up the towel with deliberate calm. I know what it's like to feel like your efforts don't matter. To feel like the person who's supposed to care about you most just doesn't have time for you. She blinked, clearly not connecting the dots. Okay, but this is different. I'm talking about actual self-care. $500 isn't that much for you. There it was. The assumption that my money was automatically her money. The casual dismissal of the amount like it was pocket change. The complete inability to see the parallel between what she was asking for and what I'd been asking for. Isn't that much? I repeated, genuinely curious about her logic. Tell me, when's the last time you spent $500 on us? On our relationship? On anything that involved both of us? She opened her mouth, then closed it. You could practically see the gears turning as she tried to come up with an answer that didn't exist. That's not the same thing, she finally said, crossing her arms defensively. This is about my mental health. I've been working hard, dealing with stress, and I need this. Working hard, I nodded thoughtfully. Like when you spent 3 hours last Sunday organizing your makeup collection, or when you binge-watched that entire Netflix series this week. That kind of hard work. Her face flushed red. You're being ridiculous. It's just money. We can afford it. You're absolutely right, I said, my voice staying perfectly even. We can afford it. But here's the thing. Relationships aren't just about what we can afford financially. They're about what we can afford emotionally. I walked past her toward the living room, then turned back. For months, I've been asking for something that costs $0. Your time, your attention, your interest in sharing a life together instead of just sharing expenses. And every time, you were too tired, too busy, too stressed. She followed me, her voice rising. So now you're punishing me? You're going to be petty about money because of some imaginary problem? Imaginary. I sat down in my chair, the one I'd been spending more time in lately since the couch was always occupied by her and her phone. There's nothing imaginary about being ignored in your own marriage. But you know what? I learned something important these past few weeks. What's that supposed to mean? I learned that when I stop trying to get your attention, I stop feeling rejected. Funny how that works. I picked up my book from the side table. So no, I won't be funding your relaxation day. Not because I can't afford it, but because I won't invest in someone who won't invest in me. The silence that followed was deafening. She stood there, clearly trying to process that her automatic ATM had just declined her transaction. You can't be serious, she said finally. Over a spa day? You're going to destroy our marriage over a spa day. I looked up from my book and met her eyes directly. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just no longer pretending that a one-sided relationship is actually a marriage. She stormed out of the room, and I heard her bedroom door slam. Our bedroom door, technically, though I'd been sleeping in the guest room more often lately. Amazing how much better I slept when I wasn't lying next to someone scrolling through her phone until midnight. The next few days were going to be interesting, because I had a feeling that my refusal to hand over my credit card was about to reveal exactly how much our relationship meant to her when it couldn't be purchased with my money. The next morning, she tried the silent treatment. Classic move number 1 from the manipulation playbook. Make the other person feel guilty by withdrawing and acting wounded. She moved around the house like a ghost, sighing dramatically whenever I was within earshot, making her coffee with exaggerated sadness. I made my breakfast, read the news on my tablet, and got ready for work exactly like any other day. No apologies, no attempts to fix her mood, no questions about what was wrong. I played that game for years, and I was officially retired from it. By evening, when the silent treatment hadn't produced the desired effect, she switched to tactic number 2, the guilt trip with backup. I talked to my sister today, she announced as I walked in from work. She thinks it's really weird that you won't let me have some self-care time. I hung up my jacket and headed to the kitchen. Did you tell her the full story? About how you haven't had time for a conversation with your husband in months, but somehow have time for expensive spa treatments. That's not what this is about, she snapped. This is about you trying to control me with money. Control. I opened the refrigerator and pulled out leftovers from the meal I'd made myself the night before. You're free to spend your own money on whatever makes you happy. I'm just not funding it anymore. My own money? Her voice went up an octave. We're married. It's our money. Interesting perspective, I said, heating up my food. So when was the last time you contributed to our money? When did you last work overtime to help with our expenses? When did you sacrifice something you wanted so we could afford something we needed? She opened her mouth, then closed it. We both knew the answer. She had a part-time job that barely covered her personal expenses, while I handled the mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, and everything else that kept our life running. That's different, she said weakly. I contribute in other ways. Such as, I genuinely wanted to hear this explanation. The silence stretched until she changed tactics again. Fine. I'll just go stay at my mom's until you come to your senses. Okay, I said simply, taking a bite of my dinner. Okay. She looked stunned. That's it. You're just going to let me leave. I'm not letting you do anything. You're an adult. If you want to leave because I won't give you $500 for a spa day, that's your choice. I met her eyes calmly. But maybe while you're there, you can think about whether you're upset because you'll miss me or because you'll miss my credit card. That hit home. Her face went through a series of expressions before settling on anger. Over the next few days, she deployed every weapon in her arsenal. She called my mom, trying to get her to talk sense into me. My mother, bless her, listened politely and then told her that marriages require effort from both people. Strike one. She reached out to my best friend, painting me as suddenly controlling and unreasonable. He knew me well enough to ask probing questions, and when she couldn't explain why a spa day was more important than actually working on our relationship, he politely stayed out of it. Strike two. She even tried recruiting our neighbors, mentioning casually during their yard conversations how I was being difficult about money. But here's the thing about trying to make someone look bad when you're in the wrong. It usually backfires. Our neighbor just looked confused and said something about how I'd always seemed like a reasonable guy. Strike three. By the weekend, she was getting desperate. I'd maintained my new routine: work, gym, reading, cooking for myself, and actually enjoying the peace. I wasn't angry or vindictive. I was just done participating in the dysfunction. Saturday morning, she tried a different approach. She made me coffee and brought it to me while I was reading on the porch. Look, she said, sitting down across from me. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot with this whole spa thing. How about we compromise? I'll find a cheaper package, maybe 300 instead of 500. I looked at her over my coffee cup. You're missing the point entirely. Then explain it to me. The point isn't the amount of money. The point is that you want me to invest in your happiness while you invest nothing in mine. You want me to fund your relaxation while you can't be bothered to relax with me. You want me to help you feel appreciated while you've spent months making me feel invisible. She shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know you felt that way. Yes, you did. I told you. Multiple times. I suggested date nights, conversation, counseling, weekend trips. Every suggestion was shot down because you were too tired, too busy, too something. But somehow you have energy to research spa packages and plan how to spend my money. She was quiet for a long moment. So what do you want from me? Nothing, I said, and I meant it. I wanted a wife who was interested in being married to me. Someone who valued our relationship enough to put effort into it. But I've realized that I can't want that for both of us. Are you saying you want a divorce? I'm saying that what we have now isn't a marriage. It's me funding your lifestyle while you live like a single person who happens to share my address. I stood up, finishing my coffee. When you figure out what you actually want from this relationship besides financial support, let me know. As I headed back inside, I could hear her starting to cry. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. Because I'd learned something important. You can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken. And she was about to learn something too. That consequences are real, even when you've been avoiding them for years. Monday evening brought reinforcements. Her mother called during dinner, and I could hear her through the phone from across the room. Apparently, this was now a family emergency requiring intervention. Your mother-in-law wants to talk to you, she said, holding out the phone like it was a court summons. I finished chewing my bite of pasta and calmly took the phone. Hi there. Well, hello, stranger, came the overly sweet voice that meant I was about to get lectured. I hear you and my daughter are having some trouble over a little spa treatment. Not exactly, I said. We're having trouble over the fact that your daughter wants me to pay for her to feel appreciated while she hasn't shown any interest in appreciating our marriage. There was a pause. Well, that's a very harsh way to put it. Marriage is about give and take, and sometimes we need to be understanding when our spouse needs something. You're absolutely right. I agreed. Understanding goes both ways. When was the last time she was understanding about something I needed? Another pause, longer this time. I'm sure she. Well, marriage isn't always 50-50. Sometimes it's 60-40, sometimes. Sometimes it's 0-100, I interrupted gently. And that's not a marriage anymore. I handed the phone back and continued eating while she had a heated whispered conversation with her mother. From what I could catch, it wasn't going the way she'd planned. Tuesday brought her work friends into the mix. She'd apparently been complaining about my sudden change in behavior to anyone who would listen. But here's what she didn't expect. Some of them knew me from company social events and holiday parties. Her friend called that evening, ostensibly to check on how I was doing. Within minutes, it became clear she was fishing for information to report back. But when I explained the situation calmly and factually, the conversation took an interesting turn. Wait, her friend said slowly. You've been asking her to spend time together, and she keeps saying she's too tired? But she has energy to go out with us twice a week. That's right. And now she wants you to pay for a spa day because she feels unappreciated, but she won't do anything to make you feel appreciated? Exactly. There was a long silence. Honestly, that does sound pretty one-sided when you put it like that. Word got back to her quickly. She was furious that her own friend had essentially taken my side, but I could see the wheels turning. Maybe the problem wasn't that I was being unreasonable. Maybe the problem was that reasonable people could see the situation clearly. Wednesday brought the nuclear option, threats disguised as ultimatums. She cornered me in the bedroom while I was getting ready for work. I've been thinking about this whole situation, and I think we need to lay some ground rules. I'm listening. First, this punishment phase you're going through needs to stop. You're being petty, and it's hurting our marriage. I continued buttoning my shirt. What's the second rule? Second, you need to start acting like a husband again. That means supporting me when I need something, not interrogating me about whether I deserve it. And third, if you can't do those things, then maybe we need to seriously consider whether this marriage is working. I turned to face her fully. You're threatening divorce because I won't give you $500 for a spa day? I'm threatening divorce because you've turned into someone I don't recognize. The man I married wouldn't think twice about making me happy. You're right, I said, grabbing my keys. The man you married was a pushover who mistook being used for being loved. But he learned something important. You can't make someone happy who refuses to be happy with you. What's that supposed to mean? It means that for months, I tried to make you happy with conversations, dates, attention, affection. None of that worked. But the moment I stopped trying, you suddenly care enough about our marriage to issue ultimatums. I headed for the door. Ask yourself what that says about what you actually value. That evening, she tried the final weapon in her arsenal, using physical intimacy as a bargaining chip. She'd put on makeup, done her hair, and was wearing something she knew I used to find attractive. I was thinking, she said, sitting on the edge of my chair while I read. Maybe we've both been a little stubborn lately. What if we reconnected tonight, and then tomorrow we could talk about that spa package? The offer was clear, sex in exchange for $500. The transactional nature of it was so blatant, it was almost insulting. I gently moved her hand away from my shoulder. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in purchased intimacy. Purchased? That's not what this is, isn't it? You're offering physical connection contingent on me agreeing to give you money. That's literally the definition of a transaction. Her face went red. You're being ridiculous. Married couples make compromises. Real compromises, yes. But what you're describing isn't compromise. It's prostitution with a marriage license. She stormed off, but not before throwing one last barb. Don't come crying to me when you realize what you've lost. I almost laughed. What I'd lost? I'd lost sleepless nights wondering why my wife didn't want to spend time with me. I'd lost the constant rejection and the feeling of being invisible in my own home. I'd lost the exhaustion of being the only person working on our relationship. What I gained was much more valuable: self-respect, peace of mind, and the clarity to see that some people only value you for what you can provide them. She was about to learn that ultimatums only work when the other person is afraid of losing what they have. And I was no longer afraid of losing a relationship that had already been lost months ago. Thursday evening, she came home with nuclear weapons. Not literal ones, but the emotional equivalent. Tears, accusations, and the kind of dramatic scene that's designed to make you cave just to make it stop. "I can't do this anymore," she announced, throwing her purse down and collapsing onto the couch like she'd just run a marathon. "This whole situation is destroying me." I looked up from my book. "What situation? Don't play dumb. You know exactly what you're doing. You're punishing me, controlling me, trying to break me down until I become some submissive little wife who never asks for anything." The projection was stunning. "I'm controlling you by not giving you money for a spa day. You're controlling me by withholding affection, by changing the rules of our marriage without warning, by turning into some cold stranger who doesn't care about my needs." I closed my book and gave her my full attention. "Let me ask you something. In the past 6 months, how many times have you initiated a conversation with me that wasn't about something you wanted or needed? That's not fair. How many times have you suggested we do something together? How many times have you asked about my day and actually listened to the answer? How many times have you shown any interest in my thoughts, my feelings, or my life beyond what I can provide for you?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, her face cycling through anger, confusion, and something that might have been realization. "That's different," she said finally. "I show love in other ways. Name one." I. I keep the house clean. You pay someone to clean the house. With my money. I do laundry. Once a week, your own clothes. I do mine separately. I cook. You order takeout and heat up frozen meals. When's the last time you actually cooked something from scratch? Each answer hit like a physical blow. She was running out of deflections, and we both knew it. "This is insane," she said, her voice rising. "You're keeping score like some kind of accountant. Marriage isn't supposed to be transactional." "You're absolutely right. Marriage isn't supposed to be transactional. So why are you treating it like one? Why is your affection contingent on me spending money on you? Why is your time and attention rationed like it's a limited resource that has to be earned? I don't do that. 3 weeks ago, you offered to sleep with me if I agreed to pay for your spa day. If that's not transactional, what is?" Her face went pale. "That's not." "I wasn't." "You weren't what?" "You weren't literally offering physical intimacy in exchange for money?" Because that's exactly what happened. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could see her mind working, trying to find some way to reframe the situation, to make herself the victim again. "So what are you saying?" she asked finally. "That you don't love me anymore." "I'm saying that I loved someone who I thought existed. Someone who was interested in building a life together, not just living off the life I built. Someone who saw marriage as partnership, not as a business arrangement where I provide financial support in exchange for the privilege of being ignored. That's not who I am, isn't it? Tell me what you love about me that isn't related to what I do for you or give you. Tell me what you find interesting about me as a person. Tell me one thing about my inner life, my dreams, my fears, my hopes for our future together." She stared at me, and I could see the moment she realized she couldn't answer. The silence was deafening. We've been together for years. Of course I know those things. Name one." "This is ridiculous. You're being impossible. I'm being honest. And the fact that you can't answer a simple question about who I am as a person tells us everything we need to know about this marriage." She started crying then, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration, of someone who'd been caught and couldn't talk their way out of it. "So what happens now?" she asked through the tears. "You're just going to throw away our marriage over a spa day?" "I'm not throwing away anything. I'm just finally acknowledging what we both know. There isn't a marriage here to throw away. There's a financial arrangement with shared living expenses and occasional physical contact. But marriage? Partnership? Love that doesn't come with a price tag attached." I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. "You want that spa day so badly? Go ahead and book it. Use your own money, get a loan, ask your mother, start a fundraiser. I don't care. But I'm done pretending that our relationship is something it isn't. You want a divorce? The question came out as barely a whisper. I want a marriage. A real one. With someone who's actually interested in being married to me, not just married to my bank account. I met her eyes directly. If that's not something you can offer, then yes, divorce is probably the kindest thing we can do for each other. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, and maybe she was. For years, I'd been so focused on trying to make her happy that I'd forgotten to ask myself if I was happy. I'd been so worried about losing her that I'd never considered whether what I was fighting to keep was actually worth having. I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need. But understand that thinking isn't going to change the fundamental problem here. You can't fix a relationship that only one person wants to be in. As she walked toward the bedroom, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. Not because our marriage was ending, but because I'd finally stopped pretending it was working. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that love isn't enough when it's only flowing in one direction. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop, actually enjoying my Saturday morning instead of spending it walking on eggshells around someone who saw me as an ATM with feelings. The divorce was finalized last month, and honestly, it was the best $500 I never spent. She did book that spa day, by the way, used her credit card, racked up debt she couldn't afford, and spent the entire day posting Instagram stories about self-care and treating yourself. The irony wasn't lost on me that she found the energy to document every moment of her relaxation for social media, but never found 5 minutes to ask how my day went. The divorce proceedings revealed everything I needed to know about who she really was. When her lawyer suggested she was entitled to alimony because she'd sacrificed her career for the marriage, I nearly laughed out loud. Sacrificed what career? She worked part-time at a boutique and spent most of her shifts texting friends. My lawyer presented a clear picture. I'd been supporting an adult dependent, not a wife. The judge seemed to agree. She got her personal belongings and half of what we'd accumulated during the marriage, minus what I could prove I'd paid for independently. It was fair, clean, and final. The best part? The house got quiet in the good way. No more dramatic sighs from the couch. No more passive-aggressive comments about money. No more feeling like I had to justify wanting basic human connection from the person who promised to love me. I kept most of our mutual friends, mainly because when people heard the real story, they understood. Turns out, asking your spouse to pay for relaxation while refusing to relax with them strikes most reasonable people as pretty ridiculous. She tried to come back, of course. 3 times, actually. The first time was 2 weeks after she moved out, when the reality of paying her own bills hit. She showed up with tears and apologies, saying she'd realized how much she missed me. When I asked what specifically she missed, she couldn't give me an answer that didn't involve my financial contribution to her lifestyle. The second time was a month later, when she heard through mutual friends that I seemed happier. She wanted to work things out and suggested couples counseling. I told her I'd already done the work. I'd learned to value myself enough not to accept scraps of attention from someone who should have been giving me their whole heart. The third time was last week, when she found out I'd started dating someone new. She called crying, saying she'd made a terrible mistake and asking if we could try again. I listened politely and then asked her the same question I'd asked 6 months earlier. What do you love about me that isn't related to what I can do for you? Still couldn't answer it. My new relationship is everything my marriage wasn't. We cooked dinner together and actually talked during the meal. She asks about my work because she's genuinely interested, not because she's waiting for her turn to speak. When I suggest watching a movie together, she doesn't automatically reach for her phone. Most importantly, she contributes. Not just financially, though she insists on splitting expenses fairly, but emotionally. She initiates conversations, plans dates, shows affection without expecting something in return. It's shocking how much energy you have for romance when you're with someone who's actually interested in being romantic with you. The difference is night and day. With my ex-wife, I felt like I was constantly auditioning for the role of worthy husband. With my girlfriend, I feel like I already got the part and we're building something together. People ask if I regret the divorce, if I think we could have made it work with counseling or more effort. The answer is simple. You can't counsel someone into caring about you. You can't effort your way out of a one-sided relationship. And you definitely can't fix someone who thinks the only problem is that you stopped funding their lifestyle. That $500 spa day request was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it ended my marriage, but because it forced me to see what my marriage actually was. A business arrangement where I provided financial security in exchange for the privilege of being tolerated. Real love doesn't come with a price tag. Real partnership doesn't require you to prove your worth with your wallet. And real self-respect means knowing when to walk away from someone who only values what you can give them, not who you are. I learned that saying no to the spa day was really saying yes to myself. Yes to being valued. Yes to mutual respect. Yes to a relationship where both people show up, not just one person paying for the other to show up occasionally. Some people thought I was harsh, throwing away a marriage over money. But it was never about the money. It was about finally recognizing that I deserved better than spending my life begging for attention from someone who had already checked out of our relationship. These days, I sleep better, smile more, and have actual conversations with someone who finds me interesting enough to put down her phone. I have more money, more peace, and more genuine affection than I've had in years. And my ex-wife? Last I heard, she's still looking for someone to fund her relaxation while she figures out why her relationships never seem to work out. Turns out, when you stop accepting less than you deserve, you create space for what you actually want. Best trade I ever made.